All right, so what I imagine some of you may be wondering about is based on the asserted premise of this channel being my life is a shambles, and spending much of the time on the episodes since that initial episode talking about the wonderful things that have happened in my life and the wonderful things about my life. How bad can it really be? And so it's time to get into some of the specifics. It should be obvious that each of them, any of them, can be its own dissertation, if not seminar. Hasn't been that long since I had breakfast. May come to pass eventually, but here's the overview. First on the list, I think, has to be that I am estranged from my children. They have had no contact with me for probably something like 15 years now, and they're grown-ups. They were born in the early 90s, so it is a choice they have made, and my perception of it is that it is a choice that they continue to make every single day in the meantime, at least since they have been adults, whatever age you consider that to be. And if you've seen or experienced, read about anything having to do in the world of nature with a parent being involuntarily separated from their offspring, regardless of what mechanism that entails, it is a very intense experience for the parent. And woe be to whoever or whatever gets in between a parent and their offspring. And if it's involuntary, it is a traumatic and just acutely traumatic experience for the parent. And like anything else in life, if it goes on long enough, you do end up adjusting to it because there just is no choice. But this is at the top of the list for me, without a doubt. And it's also one facet of probably the thing that's second on the list, and that has to do with my experience in life being a very persistent and prominent, if not acute, inability on my part to establish and cultivate and nurture and sustain relationships of any kind. Excuse me again, got a little tickle. And there again, you can easily imagine that becoming a dissertation, if not a seminar, on even multiple facets of that. The most acute one of those within that topic is significant others. I have spent the majority of my life without any kind of a significant other character in it. And that's not an enjoyable experience. That's not the way life is supposed to be lived. That's not nature's way, etc., etc., etc. And it has had some fairly easily predictable consequences that I'm going to leave to your imagination for the moment. But that is another pretty, I would say, high priority category of life experiences in which, mine leaves almost everything to be desired. I do have friends, I have good friends that I've had for a long time, and so it's not like it's a complete desert, but the examples are relatively few and far between, and much more than I think anybody would describe as normal or that I would like for them to be. Next comes in the category of material prosperity, of which at the moment I basically have none. Yes, I've got a roof over my head. Yes, I've got enough to eat, largely due to the fact that I am living with a family member. I do have enough of my own income to be very close to being able to pay my own bills within that setting. But, for someone who has, excuse me, an MBA and has had a fairly full employment career, including 15 years with arguably the most successful business enterprise of all time, excuse me again, I'm completely broke other than the money that I'm getting from Social Security for my retirement, and am significantly in debt on top of that. So basically, all of the money that I have coming in goes to paying off the debt that I have, and there is nothing left for anything else. So I depend on my brother for room and board. And there again, I think almost anybody would say that is something wildly other than an ideal circumstance, especially for someone who is old enough to be collecting their Social Security retirement. As I have alluded to previously, one of the main triggers for launching this excuse me, channel is turning to Jesus for help with my life and being in these circumstances nonetheless. And a very major motivation for turning to him for help with my life, and one of the main areas of focus within that endeavor, has been something known as divine healing, people being healed through prayer. And I'm not going to preach on it. That's really not what this is about, but it is part of my story, and it's just part of my story. And it's something that I am 100% certain is a reality. I've studied the best in the business, literally and figuratively. I'm about to sneeze here, so I apologize for that. My brother, excuse me, has been ministered to by them in person, and I have worn myself out praying for him, and that is really the focus of my motivation in that overall endeavor, beyond just wanting my life, me to have a fulfilling life, to live the reality that the Bible tells us, that he says, I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope for a future. And to do the things that he has done and even greater. And regardless of how many charlatans there are out there in the world, of which there are many, regardless of how much misinformation there is out there in the world, there are people out there that are experiencing that as their reality, and I am 100% convinced and satisfied of that. Your mileage may vary, and that's fine, but I'm satisfied and convinced, even though it hasn't played out that way in my case. So those I would say are the main areas in which my circumstances uh, amount to my life at the moment being in a shambles. And it's not really about satisfying you, but it is about putting some flesh around that claim so that you can make up your own mind as to whether or not, if you were in this situation, you might or might not think your life was a shambles, or at least understand why someone in those circumstances has that perspective at the moment. So there's that one. Thanks.